Our theme is now available for dog and parakeet training if you would like it. But I was thinking, this is like what I call like my poverty food chip wish weather. That's like you get like Fritos. I have to use Miracle Whip and Wonder Bread and have a sandwich. Greg, do you have any poverty food?
Poverty food?
Yeah, like
probably beans. Pork and beans.
Yeah, tuna fish though.
Tuna fish, yeah.
There's always that one food where when you're really poor and struggling and young, you can't look at anymore. It's like me with peanut butter.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say peanut butter is poverty food.
But we have our mysterious voice on the line here.
Yeah,
and he'll say,
cheap peanut butter is no good.
A lot of artists are risk-averse. I mean, I get that. Like, you're trying to make, with music, we have somebody who's definitely not risk-averse in making music and art. And you got to go support this and learn something to expand your mind. We're very happy to welcome Phil Pierce here. Mr. Beef Gordon.
Hi, Phil.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Now, you were just in Hungary?
Yeah, I was in Budapest for a couple of days. Yeah.
Any thoughts on,
that
was a nice segue from food to Hungary. I like that.
It's an incredible city. It's very, very beautiful. And
yeah, I bet it is.
And we got to hang out with some friends there that met up with us, some European friends. We got to go to these like thermal baths.
What was your... just to go visit people? That was
well, it was my girlfriend's birthday.
Oh.
And she's a writer. And so she published a novel last year.
Oh, nice.
And so she was meeting up with her publicist and friend and her husband. And then one of her really good friends that lives in London came over for a couple of days. So it was really, they suggested Budapest. I'm like, I've never been there before. Let's do it.
That's awesome. Well, it's interesting how art opens up doors like that, because when would you ever really get to go to places like that?
Well, no, I agree. Like that's the thing about art, is it really opens you up to like meet other interesting artists and stuff like that, and then you end up in weird places or in interesting circumstances, and it's definitely benefited my life.
And I notice sometimes that they kind of have a mirror effect. It's like, wow, you're in America, though. Don't you think that's great? And they want to come here, and they think, it's always greener on the other side type of thing. So, okay, I interrupted you, though. What's a thermal bath? That's interesting.
Oh, it's kind of like what they have here. If you go out to like Truth or Consequences, they have those. Now that I have thermal bath, I can't.
Mineral?
Well, it's just like it comes up from the earth. It's like a spa.
Yeah.
And like we went to this thermal bath, and they had all these different pools that were different temperatures and like saunas and stuff like that. And some of them were outside, some were inside.
How cool is that? That's got to be great.
Where I saw them was in January in Moscow, Russia.
Oh, yeah?
They're popular there.
Wow.
I always love also like just meeting various people. So I was going through Russia on my way to Warsaw, and I was in an elevator in a hotel, and there were a bunch of Iraqis. Now, this is right before the first Gulf War.
Oh, wow.
And
so early 90s,
and I'm going,
right? Yeah.
It was like just before the Soviet Union fell. We just got there.
Oh. Well, when did it fall? Was that like 89, 88, something like that?
90, 91.
Was it 90?
Yeah, because I
can't remember when the wall fell.
Well, that was Reagan, so that was probably late.
But no, it was like 90 or something, because it was still Gorby when I was there.
Okay.
And I always say, but I'm in an elevator with them, and I'm looking, going, I'm Canadian. And they start looking at me, and they go, you American? Yeah. We Iraqi. And they're all hugging me, because they got out to Turkey before the war. So people are like the same. I mean, I always say governments can be terrible douches, but people are pretty much the same.
Yeah, right. I agree. Like, you go and, humans are humans, and, you don't want to, like, demonize other human beings, but governments are definitely, tear people apart and all that kind of stuff.
But we were talking about, like, before this, you did say, like, the Hungarians were a little standoffish or weird.
They were a little rude, which it's fine. I mean, I guess maybe you find that with, like, former Soviet states or whatever, right? That they might be a little bit more closed off. But it was a good time.
Rude in, like, what way? Like, just...
They just, like... if you have a question, they'll just, like, we were at the airport and because we
like you're bugging them?
Well, we're flying over it. We went to Berlin after that, and we took a cheap airline, and you have to, like, weigh your bags and stuff. And we're like, there's a guy there, and we're like, how does this work? And he's like, just follow the directions. And you're like, oh, okay. Or then I'm like trying to weigh my bag, and there's a lady yelling at me in Hungarian, and I'm like, I don't know what's going. You know what I mean?
You never like suffered terror unless you flew Aeroflot like I did before Russia.
Yeah.
We had to go from Helsinki it was St. Petersburg by the time this changed it to get from Leningrad. Mm-hmm. Literally, this looks like a leftover from World War II.
Oh, yeah.
It goes, it veers. The light board breaks off and starts swinging, and then it bounces on the runway.
Oh, wow.
And then you see still the Warsaw Pact planes, but there's like people with machine guns.
That's a different world for sure, and then it kind of gives you a better perspective on us and we grumble and gripe about silly things. Oh, the checkout line at the grocery store is too long.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, guess what? Deal with it.
Well, you know what? I'm always like that. Like when I visit my friend in Philly, I'll be grousing about the traffic.
Uh-huh.
Then I'll be going, I'll never complain about Rochester again. One day I'm back here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But this is going to be a lot about sort of like expanding your mind a little, because that's what pushing your just boundaries. How did this all start for you? What was the muse that got you into all this creativity?
The beginning of like me doing music,
when did sort of like the bug bite you?
Oh, I think it was probably high school. You know, like I grew up very religious. I was homeschooled for a long time. And then at a certain point, rock and roll kind of got me, and then I wanted to play guitar.
The devil took hold of you.
Yeah. And I wanted to play guitar, and I took some music theory and things like that. And, so it kind of started in high school. A little bit later, I guess I didn't really learn an instrument until I was like maybe 16.
Wow. It's interesting to go back like that, too, about like remember the Satanic Panic in the 80s. Uh-huh. But my parents were always very open-minded about what I would watch. I could let me read what I wanted to. Okay, in some ways this might not have been good when I didn't understand it.
Sure.
You know, I'm watching Clockwork Orange when I'm like in my early teens. But I would go see concerts like Ozzy and stuff, so I would ask my friends, and a lot of them, parents very religious, are like, no, he worships the devil. No, it's an act, it's all it is,
Right. Yeah, I had an older sister, so then I got exposed to different music that maybe I wouldn't have if I didn't have like an older sister. We'd be driving along and listen to Smiths or something like that. She had a boyfriend that was older than her, and I was in the back of his car, and like I got turned on to the Cocteau Twins at like 14, and you're like it's like blowing your mind because I'd heard like religious-based music, and then you're like, what is this, and then you don't understand it, but you want to understand.
Yeah,
well, I did the one where they moved away, but nice people, very, very religious. They wouldn't even let their kids go to the mall or anything.
Yeah.
But like their little older daughter would sometimes ask me like advice for music, and I'd go, listen to Tori Amos. She's very strict religious.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's weird when you think about all that stuff to me because you wonder why are these kids into all this stuff about the devil and the devil horns and the sign and all the lyrics but then again, here's Stryper. Well, who wants to listen to that? It's just not as cool to listen to that.
The thing was, these guys
Stryper were huge.
These guys were a bunch of coke. Weren't they like a bunch of coke heads?
Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, that image is just not as enticing, is what I guess I'm getting at.
Sure. You
have to fight to get that music going.
You want things that are a little bit subversive when you're a kid, like something that breaks the rules.
That's
for
what
you.
It is. That's
Geezer Butler is vegetarian Christian, and they started doing all the spooky stuff just because it's cool. And then the great line from Ozzy when the first album didn't sell very much, that somebody went up to him and said, if you mention the devil, he'll appear. Because that explains why the first album tanked. But that's why they started wearing the crosses, though, because they had the weirdos show up in the hotel room.
Right.
So I don't think a lot of people
yes.
People don't get. They just see, on the surface. They don't get what it's all pageantry and something different and alluring,
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of music is pageantry. That's a big part of it. And I think, with Beef Gordon, that's a huge part of it is, what you're wearing and how you're presenting yourself and having a story for people. Because, I kind of was doing it for a bit, and then I learned, I have to, kind of talk in between and talk to people, and I had never done that. So I would think of things about the song and kind of communicate that way and just give give people like context.
Yeah, how did that get? Because I remember like one time actually Susie asked me between sets, you're really, really funny. Go up there and like talk, and I go, I'll just go.
Yeah, no, I same.
You just sort of have to learn.
You have to. Well, I had to like think about it ahead of time, like get a story about the song, right? And so then I would think about it ahead of time, so I had something in the back of my, like, okay, the first time I ever did Beef was Water Street. It was like the club side, and we were asked to do like a like one of those like round tables where you have 3 artists and somebody sings a song and talks about it and the other person does that. And I didn't want to get up there and play acoustic guitar and talk about it. So I had these Beef Gordon songs and I just like wrote a whole backstory on it and then talked about that in between. And that was much easier because I had an idea in my head of what this music was and who Beef Gordon is and that kind of thing. And then it kind of went from there, I guess.
I think it's called authenticity. That's when you bring your true self out there a little, which can be, tough. It's like, that's why I admire a lot of artists who, you're laying it on the table there.
I never understood, like, characters in a sense. Like, Bowie would do these different kind of things. He had these different phases. And I was like, oh, that's not for me. You know what I mean? I want to be, like, authentic and real. But once I put the Beef Gordon thing on, I was actually able to, like, sing about a broader range of things and kind of open up my personality a little bit more. And it actually helped me, in a weird way, be authentic by, like, wearing a mask.
I think I'll give you a good analogy to that. I used to, but I still do, like drag queens. Mm-hmm. And I found if you know them when they're not on, just who they are, they're the shyest, most humble people. It's like I used to use the analogy. They become like superheroes when they put on because they're sort of becoming another person. Or a lot of we're going to have some friends from theater on next week, and if you know them, they're extremely shy.
Right.
But it gives like an outlet for people where you can be what you're not going to be.
Yeah, you're putting on a uniform.
When he turns into Keith Moon when he's playing.
Yeah. I don't know. If you ever look at some of my videos, I look like I'd rather be someplace else half the time. I just kind of play because I like to play. You know what I mean? I look like I'm not affected by it. I just do. I play another day in the park,
Well, everybody's focus looks different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think a lot of that whole characterization thing, I don't know. Maybe people just, I played out Ziggy Stardust. And now then when styles start to change, you don't want to be a has-been. So you try to stay ahead of it. And I think that's what some of these artists do. I got to come up with something new for the next 10 years or 6 years.
I think with Bowie, too, it was organic. And the big mess up he made, I think all of this was organic. And you can go, you like this, not like that, like this phase. I think the problem was after Let's Dance, he became calculated. That he just wanted to make more hits. Like with Tonight, especially Never Let Me Down. He wasn't just going where we wanted to go.
What was the big single after Let's Dance? Like the next album was
China
like
Blue Jean.
Blue Jean.
Oh, Blue Jean.
And Blue Jean, like, man, that song is good, but it could have been better if it didn't have as much money in a way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I do like the song, but it feels a little overproduced.
Yeah, that Never Let Me Down, which is the one song I do like on that, and like Peter Frampton actually plays on that album, but I like Time Will Crawl, especially the new remastered version.
Okay.
But otherwise, like the whole Glass Spider tour was almost like Spinal Taffy.
Yeah, and then he did what Tin
Machine.
Tin Machine with the Sales Brothers.
I love
that. I loved it. Album. But it's one album, that's so raw and everything. But I like Good Boy by Mr. Ed from the second one.
Okay.
But I also love the title of, I think there was their live album, because there's Octone Baby by U2. They did Oy Vey Baby for that. It's like, I guess Ray Davies wanted to call, one of their albums, It's Easy, after Who Would It's Hard Out.
Yeah.
I think it was give the people what they want.
Okay.
But you have that sense of humor, right? Thinking, we'll go into, what was the birth of the legendary Beef Gordon?
I was Clayton and I, who was my partner in Buffalo Sex Change and Jazz Goons. We had recorded an album, and I felt like I had hit a wall. And so my mom had given me this like Casio keyboard, and I like kind of asked for it. She found it at like a thrift store. I'm like, oh, can I have that? And then I wasn't using it, and I felt guilty, so I just started writing songs on keyboard, which I don't play very well. And I found that the limitations like helped me be more direct, and helped a focus come out, and also I wasn't thinking about releasing it, so I kind of went a little crazy doing it. You know, and like just let my imagination kind of run wild.
I had a small Casio. Yeah, those are interesting. I just had the little one. It was only like that. And like you say, it's limited. And I did write a couple songs on it. They seem easy. I had a Wurlitzer, an old Wurlitzer piano.
I got one.
The tan one.
Yeah, so I have a tan one too.
Yeah, and I wrote like a bunch of songs on that. They just seem to be like, you just start plunking around and there it is.
Right. And I would do like the first record I did was just all on that Casio keyboard, all the drum machines.
Yep, I love that
And I
sound.
just tried to like, some tracks only had like 4 or 5 tracks on them. I just really like stripped it down.
You know what it reminds me of?
Sounded good.
It reminds me of a couple things. It's like when we were growing up, you would have your brand of ketchup and like it. Or you would have your 3 channels and you would like it. You would have to make something of it.
Yes.
And this will sound a little sort of contradictory. I am like the most free speech anti-censorship person there is. But sometimes like old movies where you didn't have the effects, or when you have to like censor just because you don't have the equipment, you have to try to be more creative in what your means you have.
Like film noir, right? Right. Like they had, didn't they have like decency laws or something like that at the time? So they had to be a little more subversive.
The Hayes group or whatever.
I read like about David Scull, who passed away recently. He's like a great for Universal Horror, and he was like writing about all like the black cat, the necrophilia, and everything. If you would have noticed it, but you had to be clever. Even like old cartoons, where you got like those Google eyes, are like
right. They would be like subtly subversive, or you had to like kind of pay attention.
Yep, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
But even like it's sort of like now there's a Deus Ex Machina like for FX. I can't draw. I could do something in here. But you had to go, dude, we have to like bang the phone wire to make a laser or something.
But like, do you think now we have access to like unlimited tracks when you're recording and like AI and like digital green screens for movies and stuff, and I actually find them less interesting. And less visually interesting to look at, because you look at older movies where it's like film and there's depth to it, and they're actually like on streets and there's things happening. You know, it feels more human to me, and I think like sometimes when I watch things that are like too much CGI, it just like gets me out of it.
Yeah, and it's not creative either. It's like I just popped this stuff out of a computer. I didn't think about it. I want to see like the space monster with the ears where you could barely see like the little bald wig.
and sometimes that's a little bit scarier, right? Like a human in a mask is a little bit scarier than like a complete CGI.
Kinda, yeah.
Right.
I mean, I've noticed like like what you're saying. You watch enough of these, like let's say there's a war thing, like, and okay, they have an explosion or an oil rig goes up or something.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, oh yeah, there's the CGI. All CGI fire things look the same.
Sure.
It's like they just take a thing and they plop it in there, and it doesn't look any different than the last 10 movies that had a fire thing in them, you know?
And some stuff looks a little bit too nice. And
right,
not
yeah,
real.
fire doesn't look like that, as an example. But yeah, you're right. And I also think some of these all these superhero movies, they overuse the CGI because they're trying to go for this otherworldly effect, but at the same time, I don't know.
A lot of times they're missing a story.
Yeah,
they're trying to make it too broad, you know, and have it cross these like cultural lines, maybe to play in like Asia or different places, and they kind of dumb things down a little bit.
Yep. Oh, I agree.
And they like make great effects, but they kind of dumb down the story, and you need a good story.
You do. You got to have characters
humans love
you care
story.
about. Yep. You have to have characters that make you like, oh, I wonder what's I don't want that to happen to them. You know? And
you have to like them.
you got to be drawn in.
Yeah.
That's why I like character-driven indie films like these days now. Like I found one called Drunk Bus.
Oh yeah, I don't see that.
Filmed in Rochester.
Really?
But a guy who drives a drunk bus, like a college bus.
Yeah.
But it's like sort of about breaking a loop, being stuck in life.
Yeah. I mean that could just that could just be interesting. The whole idea of being a drunk bus driver is just like
they're real.
The things that you could see, like the people, the way people act, and all that kind of
college
stuff.
Kids.
Yeah,
but I think you go back to music too, where what did they do? Like in the 60s for Pet Sounds, George Martin, they weren't, I'll just plug you into a computer now. I have to go.
They were like 4 tracks, essentially, right?
Bring the orchestra in. Yeah.
And they would bounce them. They would bounce them from one to the other. And by the time you got to the last track, the other tracks were so full, the last thing you do gets kind of compromised.
Sure.
But
because it takes up the tape space.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But, that's what they had to do to pile all that. I mean, your imagination was more than the equipment could handle.
Yes.
And then it kind of caught up, and then you
now
have to find
the
the
opposite.
balance. Yeah.
Now it's like we don't have as much imagination and we have unlimited tracks.
Oh yeah, let's just cover it up with some reverb.
Yeah, let's just do another guitar track to cover that one up.
Well, I always I look at your music too, where it's almost like you have like the stew pot. You put all these influences and swirl them around and make them your own.
Sure.
And I like that. And like, what really sort of grabbed you for like artists like growing up that you sort of like cite for?
Well, we were talking outside about like when you're younger and
interrupt you for a second. Those are the best podcasts, off the wall sessions. We're going to sell them for like $1,000 a piece. While these conversations just or whatever, those are the best.
Yeah. Well, I think music excites me, and so like the things you grow up with, like I still like them, but I'm always looking for that hit, that new idea, something that like really excites you. And I think throughout, like when I was younger, I really got into like shoegaze, and I grew up in Rochester, and hardcore and punk were big, and then emo and stuff. But for some reason, that kind of caught my attention. It's like atmospheric, and maybe I was like depressed when I was younger and things like that. But then as you get older, like it was very interesting because I grew up very religious. I never listened to the Stones. And then I'm like 19 and I'm like listening to like Exile on Main Street, and it's blowing my mind, And then in the Beatles too, I hadn't really explored them up until later, so I had to do a lot of catch up, and I got into the Velvet Underground at that time, or like friends of mine were like into like Death Cab for Cutie, and I was like got into Raw Power, and I'm like, why are you listening to that when you can listen to this? You know what I mean? And just like the musical journey, like it's just looking for the next thing that you can kind of like that excites you, that draws your ears in.
What is that? What is there like the one meme in the classroom where there's like Tommy, there's a kid named Tommy or Donnie or something. It's like Donnie listens to The Cure every day of the week. What is Donnie? Donnie's depressed.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I listen to. I always try to check out what's going on as far as. I take a chance, so I did buy a Death Cab for Cutie disc.
Sure,
I bought a Switchfoot. I went, these are the bands that are happening.
Yeah, what's going on?
And I want to see what it is. And some of it's good, and some of it isn't so good. I mean, I don't get, and I don't want to offend any, but I am not a big whiny emo guy.
Well, we all have our own.
Me neither. I don't think it aged well.
I think Coldplay sucks.
Well, it was really interesting. Like there was a whole cottage industry after like Radiohead did the Bends.
Yeah.
And then everybody was copying that, like Coldplay and Travis and things like that. And then they just switched and do like OK Computer. And they're like, well, we're not staying here. We're doing this other thing,
If I really got into a band, though, that was like a period of life, it would have been Radiohead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never really got into that whole sort of what it's called culty where I'm like...
I got into it for a bit, and then I realized that you didn't have to make things as complicated as that.
I forgot there's one comedian who... It's like sarcastic going about, do I like emo? Do I look like a 13-year-old depressed girl?
Well, I think it has a time and place, right?
For me, I had like my Bright Eyes period.
It does.
Yeah, but I do find it strange, and I wouldn't. There's a lot of emo cover bands in Rochester and Buffalo, and they do really well, and that's great. But that's just not something I'm gonna go participate in or get excited about.
And I'm always very bad about trying to put some. Obviously, they're in some category of music, but I've always liked the undefined. Like, I'll have people, like, I'll toss out, like, Mighty High and Dry. I'll often say, well, how are they? I can't describe them, but you'll like them. They're good.
Yeah.
Like, I would say that about YouTube. It's like, well, when I see something a little different, fun, I can't say what he is. Is he like, he's more like sort of country emo rage metal.
Sure.
Well, people are conditioned, hook, chorus, hook, verse, hook, chorus, hook, I mean, it's just the way the production line works in the music business, to grab your ear. And then when you're writing different, when you're more atmospheric, and like I've listened to your stuff, and you know, I like it. It's well done. It's orchestrated. I mean, you obviously know your theory and all that. And I think it's a nice change of pace, because after a while, boom, whack, big guitars gets to be a lot, the same old thing. But, having said that, I listened to a lot of that, some of that 90s stuff. Like, I was a big Good Charlotte and FM Static. I don't know if you've ever heard those bands.
Yeah.
But they're just that all, you know, one day, I will, you know, all that fast, punky stuff. And I like that stuff if you're in the mood for it, or you're cleaning the house or something.
Well, okay, as a drummer, question.
Not thinking music.
One thing that really bothers me about like alternative music in the 90s is the snare sound.
Oh, the canny,
just
ringy,
like I don't like sometimes it's actually hard for me to listen to it now because that thing it kind of grates on me a little bit.
Snare production is a big deal because it changes through the ages. You know, it was that big flat sound in the 70s where you're hitting wet newspapers. You know? And then you went to the 90s and you had the ringy, almost like a can.
Yeah, and Metallica were crazy with that.
Yeah.
Right? Didn't they do like some like 90s records where the drums sound like you know, like it's tin or it's like you're banging on metal or something?
That makes me nuts. I don't like that either.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice as an effect if you have a side snare or something like if you want to throw it in there or mix it in. Mix it in there if you want a different ambiance, but you know, you don't need that to be the sole sound.
Right.
Now, one question I did have for you, well, two maybe. I was going to ask you about the name, Beef Gordon, how that happened. And do you think that, okay, I grew up fairly religious too, I mean, just the Catholic thing, but, you know, different. I mean, nobody told me not to listen to stuff, but at the same time, I know my father didn't get rock music, you know, jungle, whatever he called it, you know. But the thing is, do you think that discovering the stuff on your own is better, worse, or doesn't matter as far as assimilating? I mean, you know what I mean? Well, if you grew up just being able to listen to it, would it mean as much versus you discovering it yourself?
Well, I grew up, and my dad wasn't really into music, you know. We grew up like Born Again and stuff, and, you know, there'd be music at church and stuff, but he, at one time, just told me he didn't understand music, and I was like, well, what's to understand? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe that did play into it, but there was, even when I was like really young, listening to like Christian bands, I got excited about it, you know? And then the more I listened to different things, the more I got my mind blown, you know what I mean? Because I didn't have like access to certain things, right? I didn't have my parents turning me on to like, oh, these are like the Beatles records or, you know, Beach Boys or whatever, you know what I mean? So I did get to discover that on my own with friends, because I had a lot of friends that were into like literature and music. And so I think we all kind of got to discover things together. Like, you'd have one of my friends would be into something slightly different, and we would trade CDs and listen, you know, to something they discovered that was good, and we would trade it or listen to it, or we'd go to like CD stores like, you know, Record Archive or Lakeshore or Bop Shop or whatever on weekends and try to like pick up cheap CDs and just kind of discover them on your own.
Looking for buried treasure.
Lakeshore Record Exchange, I remember.
I
got the Zombies album there.
Oh, really?
But what I used to do, too, is back in the day, like, they just go, you know, this cover looks cool. It's like $1.99. I'll buy it.
I've definitely done that.
And all of us, like, maybe like Greg's age, my age, we all had to get the ELO double album because they had a little UFO in it.
But, okay, ELO, come on. I mean, like, Traveling Wilburys, I feel like his production kind of killed some of that. Like, some of those songs could have been like really good, but
for a while it became the Jeff Lynne sound. It's like, Tom Petty, no!
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, his stamp is all over that stuff. I mean, well, that's what producers do. It's like a signature. I mean, that's like, you want me, here's what you're going to sound like. You know? Yeah. I mean, that's what you're paying for.
Well, I think the job of the producers is make this band some of the best they can.
You know? I mean, it depends on the producer, right? You know, like Phil Spector, right? Like,
you know what? They all do what they know because it's easier for them.
Yeah.
You change to me because I'm not changing for you.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of how a good producer won't do that, but most do, I think.
Yeah.
My opinion.
Producers can be tricky.
We were talking a little about Captain Beefheart before, too, and I think that's, once you go down that road. Zappa.
Yeah, I found myself like more attracted to Beefheart than Zappa, even though those guys I think were palling around a lot and on each other's. Or I think Zappa produced a bit of like Beefheart, right? Yeah, and I do like that early stuff, that kind of blues oriented. Ry Cooder's on the first record, right? Yeah, and he's great. I mean, then I think of like he did the soundtrack for like Paris, Texas.
I love that movie. Yeah. I loved it. I just watched that recently again.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, I finally bought a copy, and I'm like, I watched it enough times that I could have read it.
Was that how you did the name? Was it like a kind of
I was
homage to Beefheart?
A little bit, but like I was like I was on a bus coming from, I was visiting my girlfriend and coming from New York City to Rochester, and I was just like trying to like conceptualize a name or try to find something that wasn't taken, but also something that sounded like American, right? Because there's no pretense that it's like American music, that it comes from that kind of a perspective. And I think one thing too is like American music, there's been so many different kind of genres created in the United States, you know, whether it's jazz, blues, the country we have, rap, you know, punk, a lot of that stuff came from here, you know, and people were really inventive, and it was like, okay, well, what are we doing now? Let's just try to do something a little weird or different, and I felt like that's part of our tradition in a way.
Actually, it's like I told you, I thought of Gordon's Beefeater Gin.
Oh yeah, Beefeater Gin. Yeah. My grandpa was really into gin and tonics. You know.
That sounds good today.
See, like for me, I always call like I actually literature like reading, and like I'll tell you, like don't knock comic books, because I started with comic books. I had, by the time I was in third grade, I had a reading level postgraduate college and started reading comic books, and I would just read. My parents would like Kurt Vonnegut, Heinlein, all that, and everything else. But my gateway drug for, and I call it that for music, was actually Nick Lowe's Jesus of Cool, because what it did was, it was poppy, but it was out there, and from there I started going down the rabbit hole of there's this. Let's go listen to this. Let's go listen to this. And Coltrane.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's what's so wild too. Is just like getting into jazz, you know, and then like kind of trying to wrap your mind around it. I remember I was at this. I was in Pittsburgh maybe a month ago, and these guys were talking about jazz, and one guy's like, "Oh, do you like Monk?" And he's like, "Nah, I don't like Monk." Like, well, and I was just like, I'm kind of like blown away, because like. He's such a unique
That's one of the best detective shows ever, man. That guy was great.
Yeah, but Monk's playing is just so interesting and weird and beautiful, and it's like it reimagines like jazz piano.
Monk and Coltrane. Man, I was just listening to that. The other one would be Mr. Charles Mingus.
Yeah,
absolutely.
His bass playing is incredible.
I bought a lot of jazz when I was in college, because they had, you know, in the bookstore they would have these cheap records. And I got a lot of, a guy from Houston Pearson, a sax player, and I got a bunch of Ellington, and I got really old piano stuff, like, oh man.
Like 30s stuff kind of thing?
Yeah, the real fast,
bebop
beat, you know, it opened me up to quite a bit, because I mean, I would just play along with it just to get the tempos, and
definitely.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
You know, one of my life-changing books actually was Lives of the Classic Composers.
Okay.
And one of the things is, pretty much except for Handel and I think Mahler, they're all lunatics.
Art Tatum, that's what I'm thinking of.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
They're all lunatics. But you realize, like, there's, like, if you can really listen to classical music, the structure. It starts, it takes you somewhere, then it wraps around.
Mm-hmm. And that's interesting, because it's like, I took music theory in high school. I had a terrible teacher, but like, he didn't like me at all. But like, you realize that the theory was written after, right? It's not, it's like, and so you have to take theory with a grain of salt. Right, you should ignore some of it.
Well, it's kind of a horse before the cart thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like after the stuff was written, they started analyzing it.
Yes.
Like I used to have to do that in theory, like analyze a concerto thing. You know, okay, it's the 5 to the this to the figured bass, this and that, all that stuff, and it's like holy crap. And then, it gives you an idea, the roadmap of gives you ideas as how to put stuff together.
Yeah.
But these guys didn't have that.
No,
like
they didn't have that. No.
Yeah. So yeah.
Or you think about like post-Civil War America and blues happening.
Right.
You know, there wasn't like these former slaves getting together and like talking about what's blues going to be. It just happened like organically, and you know, and then you write theories about it later or something.
One of my strangest
we have to
concerts,
have names for things. You know?
Yes, exactly.
One of my strangest concerts ever. Bill Murray at Kodak Hall. And he was here. It was like 2018, 19. There's an album out. He did with this other guy. A couple people. It was like folk music from the 18th century.
Oh.
And he would read like Civil War letters, and they would do the song.
Oh wow!
And all this like Stephen Foster and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But that's also, too, like the band teacher's like, okay, am I in front of the beat or behind the beat? Whack. You know, like that.
Yeah. Like thinking about Charlie Watts, who kind of played behind the beat, right?
Yeah.
But his stuff was groovy.
Yeah, that stuff's interesting, too, because you get all those guys like Shatner, even Adam West. Didn't he do a couple vocals?
Yeah.
Singles?
Yes.
I mean, all these guys dabbled in...
Shatner was interesting.
Esoteric-y poetry things, and... Yeah,
I have all his albums, actually.
Yeah.
See, I've never really heard anything.
Best version of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds ever, hands down.
I have never listened to any of that stuff because I kind of dismiss it, but I guess it's good. I mean, I need to probably take a better look at it.
I think this is like my own theory from a non-musician, somebody who loves music and tries to... That I think a lot of times you can be the greatest musician in the world technically. You have to have a feel for it and chemistry when you work with people.
Definitely.
You could always say, okay, I'm going to take the greatest guitar player I know, the greatest way to put them together. The album might suck because they don't have anything. When you get people who aren't that really technically good,
you
know.
Well, they get in their own way a lot of times, and they want to you need to have simplicity, and clearly like Ramones and punk music showed this to us, that like if you just strip it down, you can have something really thrilling and exciting, and you don't need to be a good musician.
Yeah, well, that's what I look
at. It gets in your way.
I think about jazz. I think this show is a lot like jazz. We just sort of free flow.
Right.
We sort of start with the narrative and we sort of wrap around. Speaking of wrapping around a little, how did this album come to be? Can you talk about the album a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, it's American Paranoid, and I think when you start like looking into some of this stuff, or just like American history and I don't know, conspiracy and things like that, and I kind of had a lot of fun listening to different podcasts and things, but people that would like cite the books that they're talking about, and I wanted to, and I think everybody got really uptight about it, like, oh, this like QAnon and things like that, which is like, yeah, I'm not into or anything like that, but just our history in the United States and like the things that have happened, and you're just like there's a song called Sirhan, and there's a lot of evidence that he didn't shoot.
Yeah, I've been looking more into that there was like some guy from behind. And
and he like just the way he was, the angle of the gun, like, he was shot from behind and things like that. So I just kind of had fun with it. But I think overall, I do think that, I guess the last song is Managed Reality, and I do think that, our media and news and whatever side you're thinking, if you're right or left or whatever it is, we're getting fed information that we want, and we're getting we don't really know what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
There's a song on the record called No X, and it's like, I knew somebody who dated somebody who went to an Ivy League school, and they got recruited by an intelligence agency. And so they worked with that agency for a bit, and then they left. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, they get offered a job at a think tank. So they needed money, they start writing for this think tank, and basically what this think tank did is take things from the right and left and have people talk about it. Write white papers on their theories about what's going on, and then they take them, they read them, and then they push that out into the media. At a certain point, this person I know got offered a talking head position, in the media, on MSNBC.
Not interrupted.
And so but just thinking about how information is disseminated to the public and how it is thought through on what people are telling us or what side of a war story or a current event that they take, and it's oh, okay, well, that's kind of how that works, and that's good to know when you're like watching the news. You're like, oh, I have to take this with a grain of salt.
I believe hardly anything that they say because I know it's just, okay, here's the story we're going to spin. Here's the way we're going to spin it.
Right.
This is what I want you to say.
I still adhere that Paul McCartney did die and was replaced by Shemp Howard, who had faked his own death.
So you're into the fall? Paul McCartney?
No, but I'll say that, like, there are people out there who really believe it.
Uh-huh.
But I always go, like, mention conspiracy theories. It's like, okay, I'm willing to listen. Show me the money. Show me the proof.
Right.
That's what I do. And I always love history because history is, you're essentially a detective. And you're really trying to figure out, it's like the winner always writes the battle.
Yeah.
Writes the history.
I always wonder how those things get started. I mean, is it really just to boost curiosity and sales? I mean, you got to say that somebody's dead. And just to get, like now on Google, you look through their news thing, it's like all you see is like something about the new Superman movie or this or that. I mean, I know it depends on what you're into, and they send you what you tell them you like, but
well, did you guys?
It's the same stuff every day.
Yeah. Did you ever read this book, Weird Scenes in the Canyon?
I've heard of it.
By Dave McGowan.
Yeah.
And he kind of goes through like a lot of these 60s artists and how their families and parents are tied into like military.
Yeah.
Like you have let's say like Jim Morrison, right? His dad was Admiral Morrison in the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which turned out to be a false flag. We didn't actually get attacked by the Viet Cong.
It was a reason to get into by LBJ.
Right. And so he was kind of like instrumental in getting into the Vietnam War. And then you have on a cultural level all these people that are associated, their parents are associated with the military. And I'll talk to people about this and they're like, oh, well, like it's, kids are always rebelling against their parents and things like that. And you're like, yeah, no, that's 100% true. But a lot of these artists like Crosby, these aren't like left-wing people.
Have you ever heard this one? I can't even, you could Google it. I'm almost laughing trying to say it. That actually Jim Morrison didn't die and he went on to become Rush Limbaugh. Look it up. It's actually a real thing.
Well, on that front, like the whole thing with the Kennedy assassination, you really telling me that with all the stuff the government has and all the stuff at their disposal, they couldn't figure out what happened? Give me a break.
Well, yeah, no. I mean, the Kennedy thing is a whole thing. Like it's so complex. I mean, I guess I consider the Kennedy assassination to be like a coup.
Yeah. Right. Something went on there.
And I'm not sure that we've really had an actual. I mean, we've had presidents, but not. I feel like that really affected our democracy.
It did. It ruined the daydream for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know, and I don't know if we've really had an authentic president since that.
But I mean, the thing is, they go to such lengths to discount things and hide things and disprove things. It's like, what are you trying? You must be trying to hide something. If you're going to such lengths to make it like, oh no, that's not.
Yeah, I mean, think about like George H.W. Bush. He was like head of the CIA in the 70s during the Warren Commission.
Right.
Then becomes vice president, and then there was an assassination attempt on Reagan.
Right.
From a family that he was friends with.
Wow.
I
didn't know all that.
Yeah, like they're like what was the name of this shooter? But like they were Hinckley.
Yeah.
They were like a Texas family that they were friends with. And you're like, oh, that's a little weird, and then he becomes president and, and his son becomes, and it's like, well, what's going on? I mean, it is weird to have like a president that was the head of the CIA.
Well,
I've always said, up in intelligence.
I've always said that whole thing with, I know we kind of stay away from politics here.
Yeah. But this is fun. This is like
I'm not trying to like.
No, it's okay. Because I've had an interest in this myself. Because all this, and not to be not a conspiracy thing, but it is a conspiracy thing. Something's going on.
Sure.
And like the whole thing, I have this closet belief that the whole thing with Trump getting that shot in the ear there.
Yeah.
They could have orchestrated that to make him the hero. Oh yeah, because people love the underdog. People love a survivor.
I saw that happen. I was like in the Finger Lakes, and that came up, and I'm like, oh, he just won.
Yeah.
And it was like, and it did. It's like okay, because we humans like a story,
right?
Whether it's music or news or politics, we want a story to attach ourselves. Whether you think it really happened the way it happened or it didn't or whatever, we're attached to like narratives and stories. And I think like And that's what's so great about music, right? Bringing it back to music
Right.
is just like, we want a story, or like, if you have a Beef Gordon as a character, that's like a story you're telling people.
Yep.
And you're like, you're entertaining them, giving them a story and a point of view. And we're attracted to that.
It's ingrained in us from the very ancient times, the cave writings or whatever it is. Everything was a story. Everything was about this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And you have some interesting song titles, like what's Crisis Actress
You get
about?
the show, too. We zoom around. We're back to the music.
So Crisis Actress is about Beef Gordon realizing his girlfriend is a crisis actor. You know, like the whole,
Drama queen or something.
No. Like, crisis actor is like somebody that shows up at an event, a shooting, or something like that, and gets like interviewed on TV. And you'll see some videos of like the same people kind of getting interviewed at different like historical events or something like that. You'll see some of that. And so it was just like, to me having a little bit of fun with that. Where Beef's like realizing, wait, you're going out of town? Wait, but this thing happened, and and that kind of thing.
I've
it's
never
just
heard
like,
that term. That's cool.
And it's like, it was just kind of having fun with that concept.
Yeah.
Do you have like sort of a bio for the Beef character?
Yeah. I mean, I've written a few of them. I like started writing a book, but I only got like 10, 20 pages in, and it starts off like this road trip story for Beef. But then like I had this event happen where I had to go cross country, me and another friend, and pick up our friend who was sick and drive him from San Diego to Pittsburgh.
Wow.
And it freaked me, and it actually freaked me out a little bit because, you're like, not that the exact thing I was writing came true, but just a general idea of what I was writing like happened, and then I was unable to kind of go back afterwards and like really start. I don't know, just kind of like freaked me out a little bit.
It's like a little Hunter S. Thompson type stuff going there.
That's cool though.
You know what? I actually think with like for talking just like about like history and conspiracies, you always go from the man who shot Liberty Valance when the legend becomes fact, print the legend.
Yeah,
that's weird. We could do whole shows. I love like on debunking history on stuff that just doesn't, that we've all been taught that was total BS.
Well, yeah, and it's like we really don't have a good grip on history. I think that the winners write the history, right?
Right.
So you're only getting a certain point of view on it all. But I think the thing in the end is what I try to like understand is like you're not going to know everything. Like it's fun to have like conspiracy concepts and look into it a little bit, but you really don't know everything.
Right.
History is so complicated, and if you pretend like you know or think you know what's going on, you probably don't.
How did we get here?
Yeah.
I've also used like sort of the connection to there's a little like Andy Kaufman in Beef.
Yeah. I think
artist.
at the beginning of Beef stuff, that was definitely like a concept in my mind. Like I don't think I was able to like push it the way that Kaufman did, because clearly it's like it's just a different person, right? But definitely that kind of like trickster, the not winking to the audience, like going full, like, when I do Beef, I'm not just like, I'm just kidding, guys, you know what I mean? There's none of that. You have to go 100% when you're doing a performance.
Oh, I wish more people would understand this. There's like, it gets ruined by the wink.
Yeah,
you could be as campy or whatever you do. You have to take it seriously.
And the wink is fear. The wink is like the fear that, people aren't going to get it. They're not going to like accept me. But it's like, what's so weird is I was younger. I'd write music and I'd be nervous about people like hearing my lyrics and stuff like that. And then nothing happened. Nobody ever got mad. Nothing, And then after a while, like I start writing more and more, and then I'm realizing, wait, nobody's paying attention. Like nobody's listening to what I'm saying. Or like, and so then Beef Gordon was like, okay, well, if nobody's listening, let's see if they'll listen to this. Or like, so I just kind of made it very vocal heavy and a little out there.
What is really sort of like your process for songs? Is the ideas? I'm always fascinated by that. I cannot shut up, as you can tell. So I've done more movie stuff or podcasts.
Sure.
And like I've written, but I like very long form to get like ideas. And you're basically what you're doing is you're telling like 3-4 minute stories.
Yeah.
And how like do you get your ideas just from living basically? I take it.
Yeah, I mean, like on my phone, sometimes I'll just have like a long list of song titles or general concepts. So that's part of it. But like a lot of times I just sit down and like with the intent of writing something. And and I don't overthink it. I just kind of sit down and, whatever comes, this is cool, like, whatever comes first, and then say, can I write a song around this? And then I try not to get too far into the song before I write the lyrics. I try to, like, come up with some sort of concept, and sometimes I'll just start singing, and then you have a line that works, and you're like, okay, maybe that's it. Or maybe, like, I've done things where I've just written and rewritten the lyrics, just like went through it, wrote it. Like I did this album during COVID that I haven't released yet, which is actually more influenced by like Beefheart, Tom Waits, and like Dr. John, like the Greekery album. And at the beginning, I was just like rewriting everything, like like just pages and pages of lyrics. And then at the very end, I remember just like the last two songs, I just laid on the ground, thought about the song, got up, and sang the whole thing. Like, wow. Just because I had been writing so much that I didn't need to do that
like
at the very end.
Stream of consciousness moment.
Right, exactly. And like, that can't always happen.
Yeah.
But I do try to keep it very, just let things happen and let surprises happen and try not to, like, overanalyze what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of Tom Waits, if we do the birthday show this year, I do it at Iron Smoke. I play drums for it. If you want to throw your hat in the ring, you should.
Cool.
Yeah,
I have a story from that one where I'm playing.
It's a big event. A lot of people.
I'm playing with my dad. He's like, "What the hell are you listening to Cookie Monster for?"
Yeah.
I love Tom Waits.
I mean, I remember like the first time I really heard it, I was like on tour, and I was living in Brooklyn at the time, and in the band I was in, Crawl Babies. We got a gig up in Oswego. And we took a friend with us that was like a roommate of one of the band members, and he put on Rain Dogs. And I had never heard that record before, and I was like...
Yeah, that's a great record.
So blown away. Like, just the percussion,
like
the guitar parts.
You get you want like the Beefheart having a swordfish trombones.
Yeah.
But like Rain Dogs, I just love the idea of it. I used to say I was like a rain dog, because the idea of Rain Dogs is it's a dog, there's rain, the dog can't find his way back home because he can't find his friends.
Yeah.
He's one of my top.
Is that song Clap Hands on that one?
Yeah.
I had to play that one. And I had to come up with, when I listened to it, there's all these gongs and things.
Yeah,
and
I'm like a marimba in there?
No, I just used, well, I think they're gongs, or there's some, it might be a marimba of some sort, but it's got effects. Anyway, so what I did, I tried to get as creative as I could. I took what I learned in percussion class.
Yeah.
I have a metal school bell, like the ones that hang on the wall.
Uh-huh.
I got one of those. I got one of those dome cymbals and a piece of metal, and I just and I just had to do that and play along, do the groove. And people were like, "Man, that's awesome!" And you have to really, that stuff makes you create.
Yeah.
Because it's not boom whack,
No, and it's cool. Like that, it seems like what you did was like the spirit of it. Like, you're like, I'm not doing the exact same thing. I don't know exactly, but you got the spirit of the song.
Yeah.
And sometimes people, like, I have a real problem when I see, like, blues bands and they do a rock and roll beat. I'm like, it's a shuffle.
Right.
It's a shuffle. It's like the stuff that, came from Mississippi to Chicago. It's a train.
Right. Yeah.
And I think sometimes people miss that. And that's part of that story.
The double shuffles and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I know, because I've done that too, and like guys turn around and they go, "Oh my God, you actually know how to play."
Yeah.
Well, like Mule Variations, he did it in a barn. You can hear chickens and stuff in the background. Well, did you ever see Ghost World?
Yes.
Well, the scene, all I could think about, when I'm thinking about Blues Hammer.
Okay.
There's the scene where there's the old blues man, he wants to get the album signed, and nobody's paying attention. They're all drinking. Then, if you've seen Blues Hammer, they're great. It's like, got some deep down south rhythm and blues. It's like this crap. And everybody's dancing and everything.
Definitely.
That's just the way that is. But Greg, how's your songwriting process compared to that? Less deep.
Well, no. I mean, I wrote a whole bunch of songs at one time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't write much anymore. I mean, I really don't write at all. But I wrote a lot of songs in the 80s, and, a couple of them were from a breakup. A couple of them were just from concepts. Like, I had this song called When It's Not Love.
Uh-huh.
And one of the lines in there is like a secret that can't be told. Oh, shit, I can't remember my own lyrics now. But the whole point is that you don't want to admit that you don't love them.
Right.
It's like a secret you can't tell somebody, and you're holding it in. So that was, I kind of grappled with that one and wrote something around that.
Uh-huh.
When it's not love, someone's hurt, and all that stuff. So in other words, a lot of them come from that. I take a concept and try to expand on it. Another time, I just wrote a stupid song called "You're My Type, You're What I Like," and I got the idea from watching some girls dance.
Yeah.
Cause it's like one of the lines is like, when you're out there dancing, it's like my private show. Da, 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 da.
Sure.
So I just, and it's
well,
like
it's like what there has to be like an impetus. Something inspires you. Something like you see a scene and it excites you, or you're in a club, or you meet somebody, and anybody, and I think a song can be about anything.
Yeah.
And I really like pushing that in a way where. That's like half the songs on here, you know what I mean? Like, there's
I love those titles.
The pop star is really just about like being obsessive.
Yeah.
A fan, like an obsessive fan kind of a thing. And I just really feel like, love is a huge area to write from, but there's so much other things that happen in life as well. And I think the love song is really great and important, but there's things that happen in life, and I think the song is just like a reflection of life, right?
Yeah, I'll have to send you one of my other songs. We did it with Susie Willpower, and it's called "Blame It on Rock and Roll." So it's like each verse is about something that you can blame rock and roll on.
Sure,
your parents, attitude, and then there's another one where the first verse is like, want to stay up all night. I got my air guitar in hand. I'm waiting for the all-night jam.
Yeah.
It's told from the perspective that, in my head, the 13-year-old's in the denim jacket.
Yeah.
With the, and
right.
But it's just, that's you have to you have to get poetic about an idea, and how can I express this in an interesting way, right?
How can you express it where you can get somebody as excited as you are about that.
And then I got to make up stuff. I got to add to it, because now I got to make up a story about this kid that I imagine.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I get the absurdity. I relate more to this stuff because I don't know, they use terms like neurodivergent. But I have that thing about me where I connect dots in a weird way. Like, you might be talking about, you'll understand talking to me a little. Like, I'll pull out some reference out of the blue because something will remind me of.
Yeah.
Like my friend Liz would say, well, do you have Jack Daniels? Oh, they buried Frank Sinatra with a bottle of it.
Yeah.
Or I'll come up with something from here. Or
I think that, like, in songwriting, that kind of associations are important.
Analogies and stuff.
Yeah, I guess I probably am pretty neurodivergent, I guess. Like, I have problems with, like, light and sound.
I have big problem with light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but the other part, too, is I think a lot of music's universal, too, because I was thinking of, like, we talk about love songs. Everybody's dealt with the bad relationship. But, like, a song like Bare Naked Ladies Jane, it reminds me of a time in my life, like, hanging out like Java Jones was then, and that type of somebody I liked, somebody I knew, and we all have that in our life. I don't know if we have like, I'm an American paranoid, I'm definitely that.
Well, I think even I went to Java as like a teenager and like smoked cloves outside and all that kind of stuff,
I'll never get like St. Goss now doing vaping strawberry muffin vapes. There's a song right there. It's like the Gossing to muffin.
You got some great band names there.
Yeah.
Like, Crisis Actress is kind of Project Blue.
Bluebeam, yeah.
That'd be a great band name.
Yeah.
Well, you can just message Phil and he'll give him $1,000 or $2,000 and you can have a band name.
Yeah,
Don't think of a band. If you ever want a side gig like that, But one of the things, talk about just a little bit about, this has been fun as always. I was enjoying this.
Yeah, I'm having fun.
Awesome,
we're going to keep here for 5 hours. Okay. Nobody will listen to it then.
You're very introspective.
The Phil sessions, but we're going to talk a little about your other bands. Because I think I probably first must have saw you in Buffalo Sex Change.
Mm-hmm. I get. So that's like.
I have their CD. It's good.
It was. I moved back. I was living in Brooklyn for a number of years, and Clayton, my partner in that band, he had moved to Rochester because he fell in love with somebody, and then I ended up moving to Rochester too. And we were like in a 3-piece down there, and we just were like, okay, well, what can you do? And he plays stand-up drums and guitar, and we just started playing, and it ended up being a little bit more like. More punk oriented. Like, I always thought the that band was a little bit more atmospheric. And then I listened to like live recordings, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty intense. And like, and just it was very primitive because there's just like really simple drums, simple guitar parts.
I do remember like standing up with the drum.
Yeah.
Especially Bug Jar. But I always remember like standing up with the...
Yeah, and then like we did that for a number of years, then COVID hit, and we had Clayton's like a really great bass player, so we kind of did stuff more we kind of just had to switch, because you do something so simple for a while, you just want to like expand a little bit more. And so he's a really groovy bass player, and like we kind of wrote songs where we like weaved guitar and bass, and then had different people playing on drums, and we really got into percussion too. The album that we recently finished, there's marimba in it, there's like foot stomps, there's hand claps. We really wanted to get this kind of like human rhythm, and I guess I had listened to a bunch of like Fela Kuti, Durdur Band, Afropop and things like that we all really liked, and it doesn't sound like Afropop or anything like at all, but just getting influence in percussion that you're talking about, like Tom Waits too, like that kind of stuff.
You did have a CD too, because I did buy one.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure I wasn't hallucinating.
No, we did.
I miss my marimba. I wish I still had it, because I played it in college for a couple of years, man. It was really fun.
It's really cool.
I had to work hard at it.
I was going to ask you, how many instruments you play?
Oh, I just play the basic, like, guitar, bass, keyboard kind
I love just the basics. Why play nothing?
I know.
Well, it's just, I'm not a good drummer.
Would there be something
that's
you'd
where
like,
I fall
if you
short.
could?
I can't play hardly anything.
Yeah, that's why you're a drummer.
Pretty much.
Those are right. But is there anything you would like sometime maybe like either like to learn how to play?
Yeah, I would like to become a better piano player, and I was actually kind of thinking about taking some drum lessons or something like that, But yeah, I think that I'm always curious and want to get better at things that I'm doing, and like guitar playing, a lot of jazz goon stuff. I have an open D, which I was like never wanting to do different tunings, and then it just kind of felt like I just found something.
Talk a little about jazz goons too, because they've been the hot item lately. I've been seeing around.
Yeah, well, again, like just jazz goons, like I was saying, just like it just Clayton and I just really just expanded our sound, going from something really primitive and simple to something with a little bit more of a groove, more percussive elements, things that we had learned over time. We got to have our friends come in and play, like Joe Bushin comes and plays some keys. Our friend Nick plays sax on it. And our friend Mike Mayer co-produced it with us.
When you played, I saw Hannah play drums.
Yeah, she's played with us, and she's like on some background vocals.
She's
great.
Like, Shoop on that one song.
Yeah, she's an incredible musician too, and just she's a real go-getter.
And she doesn't have. I don't know how she goes on the 24 hours a day with all the stuff she does.
She's really driven.
We talked to her like being on this show, and I said, "You don't need this show if you ever need us."
Yeah, she's her and Mike together are a great team.
And I enjoy the idea. Like I've known, I can't even think of like I know Hardwood. I know I met her like around over 10 years ago with band. I don't know if she was in Cantaloupe or not.
Yeah, she played drums in Cantaloupe, yeah.
But I like the whole, she knows that Candy person and brings her in.
We actually, Clayton and I produced a Hardwood song called Lumps. I'm not sure if the song was released. I think they released the video, but yeah, we worked with them.
Fresh or whatever. That's just, I was like falling over laughing.
Yeah.
It was sick. But actually, we'll go into like, as we're winding down a little, like I was shooting that video for that song. The one I sent Greg. Well, you don't know that.
Which song is that?
With Hieronymus Bosch.
Oh, yeah.
I'm bad with titles.
Ashes.
Ashes. That was
okay.
It.
So I have known him, Boggs, Alex.
Well, I do the artist name.
I met him in 2003 in New York. I went down there with a friend of mine, and we were going to try to write music for this guy, and it just like fell apart. It was like it just didn't work. But we ended up meeting this girl Vendla, who's German, and she was like, "Oh, do you want to come to this? I have some friends," and so we go, and I met like Boggs' wife, like at the door. I'm like, oh, hey, like she was going in too, and then we met. Like I met a bunch of different people, and eventually, when I first moved to New York, semi-permanently, like I rented from Boggs. He had a little studio apartment in his basement, and the other half of the basement was like a recording studio. And then he ended up moving to Rochester too, and Clayton Clayton rented from him for a bit, and so he ended up moving to Truth or Consequences. But I have a long history with him, and he's a great guy, and so we wrote a song together and kind of recorded it. Like I kind of did a lot of the music and sent it over to him, and did vocals and did some ideas, and we would kind of send it back and forth to each other. And and I really like the way it turned out, and he's an interesting guy, you know. So I guess we're getting the wind down.
Yeah. Sort of.
What's that, producer? Shut the hell up. Okay.
We're going a little long today, but it's been a lot of fun.
Sort of go like that's the thing when we have fun. We go sort of long, but. I can't. I've lost my train of thought completely.
You're talking about ashes and bogs and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll leave with one thing we said. We talked about this. I mean, you can see some bands in Rochester that Greg's not in. They do.
You know what? One of these days, pow,
to the moon, Alice. But there is so much different variety of music here.
Well, that's what's great about Rochester, and I really do think there is such good music here and so many good bands and stuff like that. And I really think that Rochester should be on the map more than it is. And I think
no, it shouldn't, because it's our little secret. I don't want.
Yeah, but you want for the bands to continue to make stuff. They need some success.
I'm like the worst person to be a fan, though, because I'll tell friends.
It's just sad that you have to leave here to get somewhere.
But I'll tell friends, I'll go. I want you to be really successful, but when I go to your shows, can it be like nobody there? I hate crowds.
Yeah.
But this has been cool, man. Thanks for coming down.
Yeah, it was nice.
Now, what are we going to? We're going to play a tune from Beef Gordon, and what would you like to play?
Oh, I think Unabomber.
Oh, perfect.
Cheery. Okay.
It's a really fun song, and that's a weird one. I was living in New York, and I would joke around with my girlfriend at the time and sing I had this just sweatsuit, and I would put the hood up and be like, I look like the Unabomber, and it was just a joke. And then years later, I was like, oh, maybe I should write that song out.
Yeah.
So
and then I just wrote it out.
What's coming up for both of you? I mean, Greg could go on for 5 hours. You're playing on the 4th with Lindsay, I know that.
Yeah, Abilene, yep.
And Cornhill.
Yep. I played at Loving Cup last night with the Handle Vandals. Had a really good time, so look for us. We got a couple things coming up with those guys too.
Nice.
And you, this will be shorter than him.
Yeah. My next show is at Bug Jar on July 25th.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Very good.
Maybe we should do a show together.
All right. Well,
we want to do Tom Waits too. Okay, we're hooking you up here, man.
Yeah, we are.
Well, thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, it was nice talking to you.
I'll make you as busy as me. You'll be sorry.
Great.
Let's all take a deep breath. I met a woman who said I looked just like Ted Kaczynski. So I invited her to my cabin in the woods. Honestly, I'd smash my phone for just one day with you, honey. Yeah. And I swear I dropped my car into a ditch for just one kiss. I look like the Unabomber. I look like the Unabomber. You look like the Unabomber. I look like the Unabomber. I look like the Unabomber. I look like the Unabomber. You look like the Unabomber. I look like the Unabomber. I look like the Unabomber. Let's not lose our heads. I just want you to whisper, yes dear, into my ear, and we can go walking Unabomber, Unabomber, you look like a Unabomber, Unabomber, Unabomber. I look like a Unabomber, Unabomber, Unabomber. I look like a Unabomber, Unabomber, Unabomber. You look like a Unabomber, Unabomber, Unabomber. I look like a Unabomber, Unabomber, Unabomber.